Hey, what's going on, everybody? Boilon here. I hope that you're all having a great holiday season here. I mean, honestly, I consider it all the way the lead up to Christmas until just after New Year's. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about Black Cat, the Secret Defenders, and the sort of arena meta. There's been a lot of people asking me whether or not they should be buying, what they should be spending their elite raid credits on, because you guys know that for those of you who are running Incursion 2, the new one, that you're getting this daily, and actually the other one you would have gotten some, but you're getting a little bit more now anyways on the new raid, and what you should be doing with this. And you might be a little bit surprised at, what that answer actually is, because believe it or not, I don't think that you should be buying any of the skills for Black Cat. We're going to go over exactly why I think that is and what we should be doing instead. So if you're ready to go, everybody, then let's boil this down. So first things first, what am I talking about? Well, it's these elite raid credits up here, right? This is the stuff that if you're doing the the incursion 2 first strike and the new the powered up version of incursion 2, then you're going to be picking this up every single day. Now, originally, until I kind of wised up a little bit, I did buy a couple of hits of the Black Cat's passive. And after consulting both with a few people that I know and on my Discord, I came to the conclusion that you should not be doing this. And we're going to talk about exactly why. And so, what else am I doing with my Elite Raid credits? I guess we'll kind of jump to that part. Is I'm actually not doing anything right now. Actually, sorry, that's not true. I did actually finish the Nova Special only because I was already at like 180 out of 200. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this anyways. I barely use it, but I just wanted to finish it. But other than that, what I'm waiting for is Green Goblin's abilities to come out in this store. Now, obviously, they're not available right now, and I don't know how long it's going to take. There's no precedence necessarily to this being added to the store, so I'll have to wait and see for when that happens. But I mean, you don't even need to use Black Cat in the arena anymore, and that's kind of what I want to showcase in today's video. I want to talk about why buying that passive is not actually a good thing. And so we're going to go over down to Black Cat. We're going to read the passive out because, I think that's important too. So I do want to put a little bit of caveat before we go any further. This is going to be a video about why I don't think you should buy this, but also why I don't think that Secret Defenders, and maybe I should put this at the beginning, why I don't think Secret Defenders is going to continue to be arena meta for very long, especially those who are close or do have Super Skrull, because the combination is going to cause some problems. So let's continue on with that in mind. Now, obviously, that's not going to be everyone. I think there's roughly about almost 2% of the player base, roughly five. I think it's about 6,000 players now that have Super Skrull. So if we look at 300,000 overall, which is typical on some of the leaderboards, then yeah, about 2% of the player base has Super Skrull, which is not everyone, of course. It's not a lot, but however, it's a decent amount of players, and more people are getting them every single day. So this is the Black Cat passive, and it reads out: on arena offense, enemies cannot spawn with death proof. On arena offense, lower damage reduction for all enemies that do not have death proof by 15%. So this second part isn't bad. This assumes, of course, that you're using Black Cat in arena offense, but this problem with enemies cannot spawn with death proof is actually a pretty big problem when it comes to using Super Skrull. And for those of you who are well versed in Super Skrull, I'm sure you probably know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, well, you're going to find out. So once I find my Super Skrull, who's actually, no, he's further up. Where was he? Over here. So you need to really look at Super Skrull's passive to really understand what that means. And it comes down to this part over here on his passive. So when an enemy gains a positive effect, or when this character or an ally gains a negative effect, heal self for 5% plus fill speed bar by 10%. Okay, so Super Skrull is essentially getting 10% speed bar every on spawn buff, and also when they gain it, or when an ally gains a negative effect. So this can really ramp up, right? Like in all sorts of different combinations of characters, usages, and things like that. But namely, when it comes to the first turn, when it comes to the on spawn effects, if you're using a traditional traditional secret defenders, and we'll take a look at this in a little bit, a traditional secret defenders apocalypse scroll kind of mirror match or something like that, then what's going to make the biggest difference is whether or not your enemy actually has death proof or not. And so if your enemy has death proof, then that makes it easier for your Super Skrull to go first all the time before theirs. Now, if you have this and they don't have that buff, that means that you will need to rejig your team a little bit to make sure that your buffs are less than theirs, right? Because you need to take advantage of more of their buffs for speed bar than you do. If that then they will. If that makes any sense. It's a little bit confusing, but it's a bit of a speed bar matchup in that case for which one of the Super Skrulls go first. And when they have their death proof, that's actually a good thing when it comes to Super Skrull. And we're moving towards a meta where we're slowly going to be getting rid of these characters. And honestly, probably once what's his name comes out, the the Mystic guy, Mephisto, we're probably going to be having Mephisto, Super Skrull, and Apocalypse. And I strongly believe that most likely you're not going to be using Black Cat because you're going to be needing to have that 2 villain, 2 heroes. And of course, Apocalypse is a villain. Mephisto is a villain, which means that there's not going to be any room for Black Cat. I know that's a long ways down the road, but even currently as it sits, it's going to make things harder for you because if you have those extra if they don't have those extra buffs, then your Super Skrull is going to be slower. That's just how it is. But what this means is that you can also win matches without actually using Black Cat or the Secret Defenders at all. If you're not using Black Cat, there's no point in using Ghost Rider or Miss Marvel or anything like that. So that kind of defeats that purpose. But I think really we're going to be moving away. It's not that Secret Defenders are a bad team. I'm not saying that at all because I think that you should still be building them. And if you're a newer player, and of course, if you're not in that Apocalypse or Super Skrull meta, then this is still going to be quite valuable for you. But I would still hold off from buying that passive because you don't want to eventually, even if Black Cat still happens to be used, you don't want to be in that situation that you're stopping people from having buffs because I think Super Skrull is basically going to be there for the next foreseeable future, essentially, in some sort of hybrid soup. And that's why I wanted to raise that part. If you're a new player, still build Secret Defenders. Everyone should build Secret Defenders. They're great in pretty much every game mode, like most arena teams are. But I just want you to bear this in mind when it comes to arena specifically. So for the second part of this video, I want to kind of showcase this in action a little bit, at least not with the passive, not with the Black Cat passive, but other ways that you can beat the typical team that you're seeing in arena right now, just with something a little bit different. And so I want to give a special shout out here to Dogbert. Now, if you don't know who Dogbert is, he does a lot of arena-based videos on YouTube, and I'm going to link in the description down below one of the ones that he showed me because it's basically him doing a whole slew of different combination of characters because really at the end of the day, when you get to this kind of level, it's pretty much the APOC and Super Skrull show. The reason, and he shared with me this version of the team that he was using, and that's because a lot of these characters are characters that we are building or do have at G18. Kestrel, Kang, and Quicksilver, and it still fulfills that 2 hero, 2 villain thing that you need for Super Skrull. Kang being the villain, of course, Kang and APOC, and then Kestrel and Quicksilver. Quicksilver will also summon Scarlet Witch for what's worth if she happens to get a turn. But that being said, there's still a little bit of RNG in any version of it. But there's so many different variations that you can use that doesn't actually require you to use the Secret Defenders. And so I'm going to link that in the comments down in the description box down below so that you guys can take a look at it if you want to. And it just showcases that, while Secret Defenders is an amazing team, you don't actually have to do that. And I want to showcase this with number 1 because this is the typical kind of mirror match that you're going to come up against when you're using Secret Defenders is Black Cat, Miss Marvel, and Ghost Rider. And so I want to show how, especially how the buffs line up, things like that, when you're fighting against them, and how by not using Secret Defenders and or if you use the same team, essentially why this would cause a problem. I know that a lot of people still use or do use Spider-Man Big Time to disrupt Miss Marvel, that's still a thing. So there's different variations. I used to do that as well. I can actually show you one of the teams that I would normally use was not the Nightcrawler one, but this tip. This one here. So instead of having Miss Marvel Hard Light, I would have Spider-Man Big Time, which would disrupt Miss Marvel, and that's pretty common. I think that people are still doing that. I was having a pretty decent amount of success with that, but that would still have Black Cat on the table, and if I were to have picked up the passive, it would have really screwed things up. And so I want to do this match and show you kind of what things look like, especially on spawn, in terms of how many people and who has what buffs, and why this actually makes a pretty big difference. So obviously, Kang is going to give a speed boost on spawn. On offense, it's 10%, I believe, right? For Kang. And so right here on their side, Black Cat has 3 buffs. We have Apocalypse, we have Ghost Rider, and because Miss Marvel gives defense up to all 3 of them in this instance, the Secret Defenders. So that's a total of 6 buffs. My side, there's 3 buffs on spawn. So actually, my Skrull gets a 30% speed bar advantage in this case over his. So we're still going to go ahead and put that ability block on Super Skrull here. And we have obviously here with Quicksilver. Now, in this instance, what I like to do is I like to put the special down on Miss Marvel. That's going to slow her down there. And we're also going to be able to change that into a disrupt. So that's going to be really important here, landing that disrupt on Miss Marvel, which is pretty much the same if you were to run Spider-Man Big Time, right? Pretty much. Because now she's no longer going to have the taunt, and that's going to. We got really lucky there. That didn't really matter, the stun there on Super Skrull, actually. But we're going to go around and we're going to flip that on Apocalypse because that's going to be really important for what comes next here. It is a little bit unfortunate that our Apocalypse did get stunned and is still stunned despite not having trauma. Is that a bug? I'm not sure that I'm not sure that really matters though at this point, because at the end of the day, we have offense up and we have our Skrull ult, and that's going to obliterate pretty much everyone. Unfortunately, nobody has vulnerability, so we can't really take advantage of it. But it doesn't matter because with Kestrel's ping, that just basically eliminated the field with just Skrull. So why am I doing this? I'm just kind of doing this to showcase to you guys that it doesn't matter. A lot of times it doesn't matter who you're using. And it just you don't need to use Secret Defenders. In fact, Kang basically did nothing. Actually, in this case, I'm surprised how little Apocalypse did. I think that was just bad RNG when it came to who got targeted, honestly. But we're getting some value out of Quicksilver here still, and he's really necessary in applying that disrupt to Miss Marvel, who's going to make a pretty big difference. Now we do have the taunt here, unfortunately, at this point now, but it's not for long. She's going to die. She's going to fall over. And so there's no way that the rest of them are, in this case, I'm actually going to distribute a little bit. Keep Quicksilver. Quicksilver's still a really great character, right? And so he's still staying alive a fair bit. We're going to hit over here, and I'm not going to finish this match. I just want to get as close to a win as possible to kind of show you guys, because this is the number 1 battle and I don't want to finish it. So this is pretty much a win. This is a win. I'm not going to go in and push it further in case I do end up killing her. But, this just showcases that you don't need to use Secret Defenders. I'm also going to show you one more version of this, which is also if you don't have Quicksilver this high, or you don't, maybe you don't have Quicksilver at all for whatever reason, that there's another more common version that I was using before, and also what I think people are still using. So we're going to queue that up as well. Now, I did also want to show you my personal version that I sometimes use for this encounter as well, because I've been using Spider-Man Big Time for quite some time. Now, what's different of having Big Time versus Quicksilver? Actually, you know what? I meant to put Quicksilver here instead of Kestrel, but it should still go the same way. But we have an extra buff, obviously, here with Big Time. So there's 4 versus a total of 6 again, which is it's the same team that we fought before. So in this instance, we're still going to go over here, but it makes it a little bit easier because, you can disrupt Miss Marvel Hard Light, which is kind of the big thing, which is why a lot of people use Spider-Man Big Time. And depending on how lucky you are, you might get some Raider crits that might land some vulnerabilities, which we did not actually. So which was a little bit surprising, personally. Now at this point, Apocalypse does already have speed up. Sometimes, at this point, you probably just go right down the middle, clear their barrier. But there is some instances where you probably could hit Apocalypse to weaken him a little bit, but not hit him past 50%. That's a pretty big thing too. Now, luckily, we did not get our Apocalypse stun because of the turn order in this instance. And so we can go right here and hit Apocalypse. Actually, we could just go here with Skrull and hit Skrull and then hit Apocalypse. That's probably better, actually, in that case. And we go all the way around, which is great. Maybe we can start getting some Kestrel pings if she doesn't die. And there we go. So normally at this case, you'd want to probably hit someone that has a vulnerability. It was unfortunate that both Super Skrull and Apocalypse did not. But, I think this might actually... came pretty close to killing them, though. So the ping killed Skrull, which is pretty good. And now, at this point, I'm not going to, I think the ultimate typically does more damage. So I'm just not going to kind of chance this at all. We're just going to go in for the kill, 1.4 million damage, get rid of Apocalypse, and there you go. And so that's pretty good. Make sure you get the clearing of the barrier. And at this point, it's pretty GG, right? Like, it doesn't matter. I do like the Spider-Man Big Time version, I'll admit, because it makes it a little bit easier. But it really shows that, it doesn't really matter of using Secret Defenders. As long as it's the Skrull Apocalypse show. And that's kind of what I wanted to showcase here today. That you don't have to use Black Cat anymore. Now, granted, like I said, you do have to have Super Skrull at this point, but slowly more and more people are, and it's pretty normal at this point to have him. I think it's to talk about him because over 2% of the player base is going to have him, and every day more and more people are going to have him too. Now, I'm not going to finish this match because I don't want to be number 1, which is who we're fighting right now, because that makes me a target when it comes to arena payout. I like to keep my spot at number 3 typically. That's pretty nice for me. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I also just wanted to kind of discourage people from buying that Black Cat passive because I don't think that you need it. And I'm kind of wary of whether or not we're going to be continuing to use Black Cat in the arena meta context down the line, especially when we get, further along. And even right now, like you see, doesn't really matter that much. So that's the end, and I'll see you guys in the next video, and stay safe and healthy, and I'll see y'all later. Boilon signing out.